On today's show, how to write a good artist bio.
This is 30-minute music marketing.
30-minute music marketing for musicians who want to get better at marketing their music.
Hi, I'm Greg.
Hello, I'm Sheldon, and this is 30-minute music marketing, the show for independent artists and DIY musicians who want to get better at marketing their music. Thanks very much for watching or listening to us on whatever platform you choose to consume our content. Thank you very much for doing so. If you're watching us on the YouTube, why not click the bell, subscribe?
Yeah, like this channel. If you like what we say, then click a like. It
Share
really does help.
It really does. Share it with your musician friends.
And your friends and your relatives and your nan.
And your dog.
Yeah.
That might help. So this show is all about you, and this comes from a request from regular viewers of ours, a band called The Space. Hello chaps. Thanks very much for being supporters of our show. And The Space have said they needed help with their artist biography, their band bio.
Right. Oh, the tricky...
dreaded, tricky...
I don't know what to write about myself.
Isn't it funny how people who are musicians and songwriters, how they find it possibly quite easy to write lyrics and to write melodies,
yeah.
But when you ask them to write about themselves, they do often end up drawing a blank.
Which is strange, because usually most people's favourite subject is to talk about themselves.
It is funny, but when you have to maybe do it in the third person... It gets a little tricky. So we've got 9 hints. 9? And tips. It could have been 10, but I'm on a budget. Time-wise.
Time-wise, right.
Time-wise. So what we'll try and do is we'll run through these points. We'll illustrate it with what are probably good examples and snippets of artist or band biogs. But let's maybe start this episode with what might be considered to be a poor band biog. The artist name has been changed in order to protect the innocent, Greg. Okay, quotes. Here we go.
Okay.
I'll do my fantastic
Go on, do your
reading
radio
voice.
DJ voice.
Deep Mind formed in 2017 and set out to write a huge set of anthemic indie tunes. Drawing on a rich songwriting talent present between all 5 members, they have the ability to hold an audience spellbound with their impassioned and unabashed juxtaposition of melodic intricacy and indie intensity. They craft this perfectly into a carefully weighted mixture of pop sensibility and art rock angularity that challenges the listener at every turn. Well,
did they really write that?
There is a yes. At some point, some band has produced that biography.
Wow, they don't hold back on themselves, do they?
No, I mean, so there are problems with that. Many problems. The first one being is that I don't think it really says anything. It tends to run around in circles, but doesn't really hit the mark. It's almost like there's like a tombola full of buzzwords.
But it almost sounds like something you'd expect to hear from a politician, where they avoid answering the question by answering the question.
Just by talking, and it's full of hyperbole. And I think the main issue is that upon listening to that, it doesn't actually make you want to go out and actively listen to it. So in other words, if somebody pitched that to you, and that's I'm not wanting to click play.
Well, I mean, they did manage to fit I can't even pronounce it. Juxtaposition of melodic intricacy. I mean,
it's very florid. Florid would be the word.
I mean, they've used some really good descriptive words, but have been unable to describe anything.
Yeah, it doesn't really give you. It doesn't pique the interest. That's another way of saying it.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, that's some grandiose statement, and you really hope, if you are actually going to go and look or listen, that they can really back it up.
Yeah, it just reads like a lot of BS. Again, someone like me, that just sounds like somebody who is just trying to be very defensive and trying to hide almost what they actually sort of sound like. So as we,
I mean, it's like you wouldn't expect McCartney to write something like that.
Well, he's probably got people to do it for him.
Or Hendrix. They always kind of were like, Hendrix was like, yeah, I'm all right, kind of on guitar. He never, whereas this, they're like, yeah, we're amazing. Of melodic intricacy.
Okay, so
Go on.
what's point number one, Greg?
Point number one is we do not need your life story.
Most people, I've seen it on a lot of artist bios, they literally start at the beginning. I picked up, or he picked up
Back
the
in the
guitar
midst of time, you have
at
to
the
do
age of 5,
Yeah.
and then he went to this school and learnt this, and then he graduated and went to this college and learned that. And dare I say, nobody cares. In this day and age, you don't need to even reference any sort of timeline. You don't even have to say how long you've been going as a band or an artist. You don't even need necessarily to list all your members in your band if you don't want to.
But the thing is, though, and I understand why people do this, is because it's trying to create some kind of, I'm invested in this. It's like they're trying to create a kudos by kind of saying I've been doing this all my life and it's my my biggest passion. And I think years ago I got a band to do something similar and I got it sent and I was like, and the first question you said to me, what's your story? And I tried to do something similar and kind of going, oh, we've been doing this for this long and that long. And the first thing you just said was, so you're a bunch of failed musicians then. And it was like, it was really cutting, but it was like, it was really, really true. If you're making out that you've been going since dot, then the first thing someone is going to ask is, why haven't I heard of you before?
Right, so I've got 3 snippets, 3 examples from particular band bios. Okay, here's the first one. When it doesn't have 5 or 4, Black Daniel has 3 members. They are brothers Luke and Lamech 2000. That's a good list, like Andre 3000 from London town, and Craig Louis Higgins Jr. from New York via Cape Cod. That's the first one. Second one is London's Raven Beats Crow consists of Liam, Sam, Robin, and John. And the third one is the Bee of the Bang is a collective of human beings from Portsmouth.
So are you referencing these as good or bad or average?
They are succinct. Some of them say...
Now you're giving me a politician's answer. Just answer the question.
No, I think they're good because they don't necessarily give an entire sort of life story. So it's like, for example, this one here, London's Raven Beats Crow consists of Liam, Sam, Robin, and John.
It's to the point.
It's to the point. It doesn't.
Is there really a band called the Bee of the Bang?
There was at one point.
Are they the best bang since the big one?
Who knows? So yeah. So you can choose to omit the names of the people in the band. The thing I always used to say is, back in the day, I used to be, quite a fan of Coldplay. Some people might shoot me for that. But bought the albums, went to the concerts. If you asked me to name the bass player of Coldplay, I had no idea.
But it's like that with you too, though, isn't it?
Well, I can name all 4 members.
Yes, I know, because you're a fan. Or it's like Oasis, where
but this is it.
2 key...
If you're introducing yourself to, potential new fans, you don't need their life story. Keep it short, keep it sharp and snappy.
I don't know anything about Lewis Capaldi, apart from he's Scottish.
And he drinks a lot.
And he likes drinking, and ITV like to censor his speech. But that's about all I...
Don't tell me you watch the Brits.
No, I only saw that on a Just Some Post.
Okay.
And stuff. So, but I know that he does music that's quite popular.
So we don't need it to be overly... the one thing I haven't addressed, actually, in this, is what length your bio should be. I think you should be able to cram everything... Certainly, I like the 9 points that we're going to cover in even less than 100 words.
Well, that's the thing. I think in some ways people turn bios into like a resume.
Yeah.
Where it's like you have to kind of put all your life experiences and interests.
If you can get a nice chunky paragraph, a nice sort of 100 or so words, I think you're laughing. Right. Okay. So number 1 is we don't need your life story. What's number 2, Greg?
Number 2 is you'll need to tell people what you sound like.
Our brain doesn't like uncertainty. If you can provide any sort of reference points, that's
Before we
did
this, you did play a song by a band, and they just, when I think a friend of ours asked them what did they sound like, they didn't know. And
what they wanted to sound like.
Or what they wanted to sound like, they didn't know. And that's going to make it difficult. Unfortunately, I know bands don't like to be pigeonholed, but you will be, and anything that I suppose that can help that process is going to help you get discovered.
And that's, it's sometimes one of the reasons why people might go, right, well, I think I might be interested in this because they claim to be like this particular artist, and I like that particular artist, so ergo, I might be sort of more interested.
A point of reference.
Them. But, don't just, you can make it a little bit interesting. I've got another couple of examples here.
Go on.
We sound like sharp rocks on a big hillside in the blue spring. We sound like a river speeding through a slow-carved valley in summertime. Ooh, that's interesting. And here we go. This is back to our friends Bee of the Bang.
Right.
Bee of the Bang use guitars, loops, mandolins, white noise, xylophones, accordions, banjos, feedback, shouting and percussion to conjure up melodies for maladies in the 21st century. So that's almost being quite sort of cheeky and quoting a range of musical bits and pieces.
They're kind of almost going. Certainly, the first one is more like emotional rather than.
That's a very good observation.
Rather than genre.
Yeah. So rather than to say, oh, it's like angly guitars, it's almost like what visual accompaniment would your sort of music suit? So if you can find interesting ways to sum up and describe your sound, all the better, all the better.
The only thing is, though, that I mean, I have to be honest and say that is not what I was expecting on when you're trying to tell people what you sound like. Are many of our listeners, or the many that we have, are they not going to look at them and kind of go, ooh, that doesn't really... It's a signifier, but it's not really a signifier. It's more just like... We sound like a river speeding through a slow-car valley in summertime.
So this is an idea off the top of my head. If you were to film a video for one of your songs and you had an unlimited budget, what visuals would you accompany? Would accompany your music? And our music is designed for these sorts of scenarios.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, unfortunately, though, the most people would, at the moment, they would feature themselves because that's what everyone else is doing. And it's almost like I need to do what they're doing because I need to do that because that's what everyone else is doing.
Right, here's a couple more then. Right, here we go.
Not that they should.
Yeah. Their idiosyncratic, danceable indie pop sound is induced by two drummers, chanted gang vocals and frantic guitar work that makes you realise the missing link between Sting, Prefab Sprout and Katy Perry.
Somebody else knows Prefab Sprout.
In fact, somebody only yesterday tweeted me about a Prefab Sprout album.
Which one?
It must be I don't know. I'll get it out for you later. Right, here's another one.
I'm a big Prefab Sprout fan.
Whilst being one of around 5 bands on Earth that can actually claim they sound like no one else.
Ooh,
No, but it's being cheeky. Comparisons of relations can be drawn to the likes of Divine Comedy, The Blockheads, Stanley Holloway, Talking Heads, Eels, The Fall, and Mr. Bungle. So they're being sort of quite cheeky, saying, "Oh, we don't sound like anyone else," and then say, "Actually,
we sound
do
like
sound
a variety." I actually saw the Divine Comedy live, and they were one of the best bands I've seen, and I didn't even really like their stuff, but the performance was great.
Well, there you go. So yes, so you can mention, musical points, references, but if you can do it in an interesting sort of way.
And I think that's it, isn't it? It's about, at least these are good examples of stuff that's probably against the grain and is going to provide maybe a bit of intrigue. But at the same time still give some references.
So what does the missing link between Sting, Prefab Sprout and Katy Perry sound like? If anything, so in other words, that not only potentially describes elements of the sound, but does it in a way whereby, I actually wonder what that does sound like.
Maybe it's the difference between If I Ever Lose My Faith in You, Cars and Girls and California Girls.
What is it with Sting and Shaggy as well? Well, we have to...
I don't.
It's a very odd combination.
Sting can perform with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, and it's amazing. And then he also chooses to perform with Shaggy. I don't
do the voice.
Sorry, it was terrible.
It was.
I don't get it.
Right.
Number 3.
Number 3, Greg.
You've mentioned this one before.
Oh, forever and ever.
If you can, tell a story.
We know all about stories, Greg. Indeed.
Oh, we did an episode, didn't we?
Episode number 4 was all about storytelling for musicians. It was that important. We put it in right at the start of our podcast series. In fact, maybe we should even point. We'll put a link in the show notes.
Put something so I know where it is.
Put it in the show notes.
Oh, in the show notes, yeah. I'm just waving now.
So we know that stories engage and hold the interest of people more than just a simple series of facts. Right, here's here's a story from an artist's bio, Greg.
Okay.
It's good, this, because I get to read out a lot in this particular episode. After the umpteenth bailiff letter landed on Scott Russell's doormat, he knew it was time to sell up and move on. The last and hardest belonging to let go was his beloved 1960s Fender amp, which he very reluctantly sold to clear his council tax arrears and gas bill. While rattling around the house on his own, the sense of loss and heartache inspired him to write and record an album under the new moniker Rusts. See, now that's great, because it almost contextualizes and sets up the scene. So here's someone who potentially has hit rock bottom. And, you know, it's someone who's maybe someone who's going to be writing, you know, doing a form of the blues. So it's already setting up the style. Here's someone at, you know, potentially at their lowest point. And if you're writing blues music, that's unfortunately the best place from which to write from. A couple more.
Go on.
Meeting for the first time in Manhattan through a friend on the dance floor of a Lower East Side disco, they quickly discovered a mutual love of animal tranquilizers and long walks in the rain.
So they're like...
That's setting a scene.
So they're like ketamine and Manchester.
And you know, going for a walk on Map My Run, or whatever it is. Right. Folk symphonist, singer-songwriter, so that's quite clever,
good play on
and
words,
an evangelist for English eccentricity. Too naughty to follow his father, grandfather, grandmother and uncle into the clergy, black sheep of the family, the Reverend Simpkins set out in 2008 to take on the devil on his home territory of folk and roll. Now that's like a pitch for a movie.
With pitchforks.
So it sets up someone who's almost like a complete juxtaposition of following the family business, as it were. So.
And to be honest, I mean, there's no reason why any of that's true, is it? It's
funny you should say that, because that's potentially one of our sort of future points.
Okay.
But so if you can write and come up with a short sort of story that encapsulates your musical
ideas and themes
and journey to where they are now. It could even be the ideas and themes that are present within your music. Can you tell that particular story in your band biog, rather than just saying we play this sorts of music and we've been going for this long? Just one final one, I think, before we go. We tell stories of shipwrecks and shark bites, blurry-eyed Hawaiian islands, post-apocalyptic hoedowns and horse races.
These are a little bit arty, aren't they?
Well, it's funny you should say that, is that it's making what you're doing interesting. And the whole point is you have to make it interesting for someone else on the other end to grab their attention. And you've got to, like I say, if you can't write anything interesting and you want some sort of media coverage, how do you expect anyone else to find it interesting sort of their end? You
put here, if you were making a film, how would you pitch it?
Yes.
Think, probably your favourite Bohemian Rhapsody film, it should be interesting.
So, if someone was to pitch the Freddie Mercury film, as in, he's a bloke, he's a dead good singer, and he came over in the 70s, and he was in a band, and he went on to be dead big and famous. That's not really an exciting pitch. However, in terms of his story, he was a refugee who didn't potentially fit in with the climate of the time in terms of his sexuality. He had the grand female love of his life, but in terms of his sexuality, that's never where it was headed. He was an intensely shy person, but also happened to be one of the greatest rock and roll frontmen of the time, and the conflict that potentially rested within him.
But some might say the stories come out after the event rather than pre-event.
I'm just pitching the film, Greg.
Okay. Sorry.
Don't pour water. Anyway, it did over $1 billion at the box office.
Oh no, I'm not talking about the film. I'm just talking about the story itself. So you've put another point here. Can that story describe the themes and the goals for your music career? Why are you making music? That's your story.
Yes, so, and that's it. You know, so like the music that you're making, the reason for doing it, there must be some sort of burning desire that makes you want to write the music that you do. You know, can you tell people very succinctly about that, about why you're making the music that you're doing?
Actually, to be fair, I mean, at some point it might actually be worth recommending. Are there any music bios by famous artists that you could recommend?
Not off the top of my head, no.
What, have you read
Come
any?
on, how much research do you want me to do for each episode?
No, I'm just saying, what was the last music biog that you read?
Well, the ones that are actually included within the notes of this particular episode.
Fair enough, okay.
He's a hard taskmaster, ladies and gentlemen.
Right,
He
we'll
really
move
is.
swiftly on to number 4.
No, it's funny this because you almost hinted at this.
I know, I'm just a minder
What is
of that,
number
right?
4?
You don't have to be truthful with your story.
Right, here's a quote from novelist Christopher Isherwood.
Go on.
He said once, "Anything you choose to invent about yourself is part of your personal myth, and therefore, in a sense, true."
Right.
So so if you decide to almost like create a story which fits in with the themes of your music, then that, in a sense, is a valid process for you to do. So, in other words, if you say, "Oh, there's nothing particularly interesting about me and or about my band members and how we formed," in terms of the music that you're making and the themes that are encompassed within your music, can you almost create a legend and create a story as to how you got together? That is potentially a viable thing to do.
Is there any references you could use?
We C6 Steve.
Is he not real?
No, the impression was that he was a bit of a hobo character. He was down on his luck and he was riding
Slept on people's couches,
riding the freight trains, and it was a load of bunkum. But it was a story that they crafted in order to fit the southerny blues music that he was making.
Didn't they imply that the character C6 Steve was actually 10 years older than the person playing him?
Again, because that's almost what is expected of somebody making that sort of music. And it's funny because the press eventually got hold of this particular fact and debunked this particular story, but it never hurt him in the long term. People just went, yeah, not really bothered.
I think they'd kind of they'd become so attached to the character, it really didn't matter.
So so as long as you don't say we dated Rihanna and she co-wrote the album. Obviously, don't create a story like that. But try and potentially.
It was Leanne, not
Liana. Yes, the Rihanna tribute act. So you don't have to be truthful if you can find, interesting ways to come up with a story that
it's creative license, isn't it?
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. So number 5, it's okay to tell people where you come from.
I think where you come from always has a bearing on what you maybe should or shouldn't sound like. Because in other words, like for example, if you're a band that comes from Manchester, if you say that, people already have a thing in their head of the musical continuum of Manchester, whether that's maybe Oasis or New Order or the Happy Mondays and all that sort of Manchester thing. So I think it's fine to reference where you come from.
Hang on though, I do see a lot of bands of the local-ish vicinity that say they're also from Manchester or Liverpool, and it's like, really?
And you mean stretching the potentially
yes.
where
I mean, how
from?
far do you go? I mean, if you're talking like a 30-mile radius, that's like saying I'm in a band from Cheltenham, but I'm actually in a band from Bristol, just to try and get on the trip hop vibe. Would that be pushing it?
That might be pushing it. Again, we're talking about being truthful. Here we
Well,
go.
yeah.
Right, here's one particular example of a band bio and a placement within it. Here we go. Athletes in Paris come from the northeast and sing in an accent too broad for anyone outside a 50-mile radius of Sunderland to fully comprehend more than little sound bites. So in other words, that they're almost playing up the fact that they're from one geographical location, and they will even sing in the accent of that sort of local timbre as it were. So it's fine to give people in the same way that we're talking about musical influences. It may well be that your geography has a musical influence on your sound as well.
The other thing, I mean, if you're only ever going to choose the capital, that would be like every artist comes from London, and then you're going to be competing with every other artist that comes from London. Whereas at least with this, you're providing something that's yours, and again, it can add to the story and stuff like that. So are you proud you're from
the northwest of England?
Yeah.
Well, yes, very, very, very much so. And I think in terms of my particular band, we form a part of a musical continue, and it's almost like that's almost buried within the DNA of my particular musical project.
But also at the same time, though, you get because because you're a Northwest band, your audience are of mostly, not all, but you have quite a large percentage of Northwest. But they're very, very they really support, but they will defend your band and your ideas and your material. They will they'll stand your
I think it's true to say that the more you are rooted within a particular region, so in other words, this particular band, if they're singing in the local sort of accent, then it will be that they, the people in and around the area that they come from will probably feel greater ownership to them.
Yeah, and they'll probably protect it, and they'll fight your corner, so to speak. So
again, some people might say that, oh, really, that might be perceived as a bit of a bad thing, and they want to be more, the every man or woman, as it were. So swings and roundabouts. So you can tell people where you come from if you need to. Right,
number 6, your bio should include your personality.
It's funny, I think that the examples that we've been dropping so far, they do illustrate a lot of, you could say quirkiness, but I would also say personality. And I think the way that you write your band bio should give people a hint as to your personality, because it's like it forms part of your branding. And again, if you can put the essence of your personality within those 100 words, it might not necessarily be that easy, because we've got to try and condense it down. But again, that gives people a first indication as to what sort of person you are, or what people you are. It could be quirky, it could be serious, it could be, again, story. If you storytell within your biography, that almost indicates that you are very much a storytelling musician.
It is a little bit like a dating biography, isn't it? In terms of a dating description, and you'd hardly go,
no, so I'm not that you'd know about.
No,
this.
I wouldn't. You wouldn't just put, I'm a man, I have 2 legs and 2 arms, and I'm available. You need to do a little bit more than that, you would have thought, for any potential interest. And so personality is important. Stop sniggering.
No, I'm not sniggering at all.
You are.
Hey.
Right, so personality, it's all good. Right, number 7, you can mention career highlights.
I think if you've had significant radio play, played significant sort of festivals, what other career highlights might a band have?
What about support slots?
I'm just going to say supported a particular artist or been on tour with particular. There's no point in hiding these things under a bushel. All these kudos points can accumulate.
How far back do you go?
Well, I occasionally reference something. I might reference something that happened 12 years ago if I choose to. Again,
really,
it just depends how much you've got to talk about.
So you referenced that gig at the top of the Radio City Tower?
I don't mention particularly, but here's the way that one particular artist or band mentions some of their career highlights in a rather interesting way on their bio. They say, we've been played on BBC Radio 1. We've played songs at loads of gigs. We've played some gigs with really good bands, brackets, see list below. We've played some really good venues, brackets, see a list below. So in other words, what they're saying is, I'm not going to over exaggerate the fact, as in, and they're giving people a hint as to the number of kudos points and significant things that have happened to them, but they're not going to labour the point, as in, there's a list below at the bottom
you
of this
choose
particular.
whether you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, yeah. No, that's cool. So, And there really is, you'd quite happily go back 12 years.
If that's the biggest thing that's ever happened to you, then why not? Again, it depends how much you've got to talk about in this small allotted space that you have.
Okay, number 8, I'll leave you to say it because I can't pronounce it.
Okay, I'll do it. Avoid hyperbole.
Hyperbole.
You're making me say it wrong now. You're rubbish, you. Hyperbole. Don't,
That's 'cause I'm from the
don't
Southwest.
overly exaggerate because you're only going to get yourself into trouble. If you say, oh, you've never heard anything like us before, I'm sorry, we will have. Don't boast and make wildly exaggerated claims.
You can, if you're clever, like that well-known lager brand that said they're probably the best.
Probably.
That's a clever
If you
use of word.
pre-qualify it, then maybe you might just get
But
away
saying
with it.
definitely,
But just saying, we're the best band ever, or I'm the best rapper ever, and it's just going to make people start sniggering from the off.
they've already made a decision and an opinion
Yes.
before they've even given you chance.
And you're giving people ammunition in order to shoot you with. Quite frankly.
So yes, avoid the BS. As you put, I mean, I sound so American saying it. Right, so number 9, try and condense your bio into a strap line.
Strap line.
You did mention this earlier.
Yeah. If you think about films, all films have a strap line. In other words, the entirety of the
Slogan,
film.
not slogan.
Yeah, slogan.
Okay, right.
Summed up into one sentence. Products often have the same as well. So the example I always use is Alien. The strapline to the original Alien film in 1978, whatever it was. In space, no one can hear you scream. So it's like in space, the film, in space, no one. So in other words, you're pretty much on your own with said alien, can hear you scream. Right, you're going to be screaming because you're terrified because there's an alien. So they managed to succinctly put that entire, the 2 hours 20 of that film into but a couple of words.
Wasn't it in Die Hard 2, whereas how can the same mistake happen to the same guy twice?
Something along those lines. Gillette.
That's not a film.
No, but it's a brand, it's a product. And, their brand slogan is the best a man can get.
Although I think that's subjective.
Well,
shouldn't it be probably?
I'm not making any claims against their razory products or shaving gels. But if you can take your 100-word bio and condense it down into a sentence or even half a sentence, the sort of thing that if you're on a poster and there's 3 bands on the bill and maybe you're the middle band and it's like your artist or band name, what strapline can accompany your name which will tell people reading that particular poster all about you in the shortest number of words? So the strapline for my particular band, Greg, is Kings of the Northern Knees Up. So within 5 words, Kings, with the best of what we do, of the Northern, so again, we're talking about where we come from, the northwest of England. Knees Up, so knees up is another word for party music. So we are saying that we are from the northwest of England and we are the very best at party music.
I don't know if this was officially an official tagline, but I do remember, because when people would ask you to kind of go, what is your music like?
Yes.
Kind of thing. And didn't you used to say we're comedy folk for comedy folk?
No, it was a 21st century folk for 21st century folk.
Okay, it was kind of similar, but it was
similar,
but again, it was you were still using a descriptive sentence that enables people to kind of go, okay, I've got a bit of an idea of what they're like.
It was basically a modern take on folk music.
Yes.
For
Modern people.
Up-to-date people. And obviously things have changed since then in terms of how we go about and approach things. So if you can have, coming up with a bio, that's quite hard. Coming up with a strapline, that's next level. If you get confident in your bio and you manage to whittle everything down and so if you can sum your whole musical essence
whilst
in
avoiding
a strapline.
point 8. So
whilst avoiding hyperbole.
Yep.
That's a very good thing to do. So master the bio first, and then master your strapline, and then you can use that, as I say, in all your publicity materials. It's what accompanies your artist name, like I say, on those gig posters, which tells everybody in as few words as possible exactly what you sound like.
Can I now introduce? I'm thinking on my feet here. So
carry on.
Okay, so right. we're going to do a summary. Can we do this summary in a minute? And that way we can also use the summary as a 1 minute thing, like
a 1 minute snippet.
Yes, 1 minute snippet. Hashtag that.
We can but try.
Okay, I'm going to time this. Right, are you ready? You start because I've got to look at my watch. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so in summary, our top tips for creating a band biography are: number 1, try and tell an engaging story that contextualises your music and explains to people why you are making the music that you're making.
Number 2, tell people what you sound like in a way that maintains the interest of the reader. Play with points of reference.
Number 3, be interesting. If you've nothing interesting to write about, ask yourself, why not?
Number 4, highlight your differences. What do you do that no one else does? If you have no differentiation, that could be a problem.
It could be. Number 5, you can exaggerate in your bio if you need to, but potentially beware of the consequences.
And number 6, make sure your personality comes across.
And that's
that was in 56 seconds.
This particular episode, it might even be better when we don't make any mistakes.
I know. So remember, please like what we do. If you like what we do, hit the subscribe button.
Hopefully you found this to be of some use. It might actually be a case of you might even need to re-watch this or re-listen to the podcast to get, to potentially write down some of these, some of our hints and our tips, because you potentially don't obviously get everything the first go round.
No.
And like the chaps the Space did, if you've got anything you'd like us to talk about and give our advice on in a future episode, just contact the show on YouTube. Stick a comment underneath it. I think that's what the chaps from the Space did. Or if you see this particular post on the Facebooks, just pop something under there. And if it's a good idea for a show and we think other people will benefit from it, we will do an entire show dedicated to you. You can't say more than that, and it'll cost you nothing.
Absolutely not. So we will see you again same place next week, same time.
Music Marketing Monday.
Right, take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.